Well, after almost 5 years of doing radio, I still start out with butterflies in my stomach, and I was always scrambling at the last minute. Hits and near misses, and I wonder if the word near is even right. It shouldn't be near hits if you've been missed at all. So that's what we're talking about. And fight, flight, or freeze. Got a few topics to cover, and Brand Thornton's with me again today and going to join in here in a little bit. Among the topics, I'd like to give a thanks and a shout out to Cherry Roberts at Challenging the Rhetoric. I'm especially glad that she's willing to engage with people that have some opposing views and to seek out where we do see some things the same. So my respect and acclimates to you, Cherry Roberts, and that's going to be talk about. That's when Brandon and I are going to come together. We're gonna roll into this topic of Rex Alex Jones's son in his challenge to David Hogg, where he says, "Hey, Hogg, step up to the plate and let's debate." And we'll go in and talk about cows and guns. Uh, Good video you posted there, Grimner. So let's uh, let's roll on along. Well, the hits and near misses from that'd be Saturday. Let's back up. We'll start right there. Last Saturday, I left out to a rally and a vigil on Martin Luther King Boulevard here in Vegas, and I don't know why that player is playing over there. You're gonna find where to stop it, or just turn your volume down on that all the way. That'll solve that problem. Did you get into the chat, Bram? All right. Yes, you did. That's Desert Ram, Bram Thornton, and welcome to the chat and everybody there listening along. Okay, so back to Saturday. I go over there, got there right on time, 10 minutes late, but of course things didn't start off very fast. But there was a lot of people showed up. I got video to Facebook Live, and I have some on my other recorder. So eventually I will be setting down and bringing all this together. Right now without internet, so we're doing this off of data and Skype. Uh, to do the reports. And so we'll want to get those videos over to reallibertymedia.com, over to the YouTube channel, and over to my blog page there, which is What Matters, a Ponder Gander, or you can just Ponder Gander with VinE. Okay, so Saturday we met What Happened in Vegas, the producer, director, the movie maker, Ramsey Dennison, and do have a interview with him, and so we moved through topics of police brutality and corrupt cops into looking at the Las Vegas shooting, touching minorly on a few points along through there, and on to the Bundy Ranch and Sheriff Joe, who must go, fire the liar, Joe Lombardo, because he was out there in 2014. Let's see. So there and some other folks. Oh, pretty interesting. Along the way, I met this one kid and told him where I was going, and he says, "Hey, yeah, his friend was going to be there. They call him Stretch. You won't be able to miss him." And sure enough, there he was, towering above the crowd. A lot to say about what's going on there. A little later in the evening, I did a cop watch audit or a semi audit, and I'll have a report on my observation of a stop and ID on the streets of Las Vegas, and also a woman screaming for help. Where after running down the alley where I thought it was coming from and determined it was up above in a parking garage, I thought it best to go back and look for a cop. Didn't find one, so I called 911 and watched the exit there. Pretty, a lot of people wonder what you do in a case like that. And I'm pretty sure that I did the best thing I could. Talk some about the 911 operator and some problems I see in that, or perhaps maybe I just don't see it all happening as they would see it. Let me see then from the rally there and the vigil for Stephon Clark. He was shot 20 times in Sacramento. of the police. This, there's. I heard somebody talking Saturday night, and they said, there's more shootings because there's more people. And I really never had considered that or even thought about that. But it's obvious. I mean, if you've seen cities grow over the last few decades and dispersal of the bad side of town, it's now seeded throughout all parts of any city you go to. City is city, north or south, east or west, across this country, and I've been to many of them. Coming up 15 months, traveling here, and we'll be headed back towards the east to Texas, anyways, here in a little more than a week, and then back to Arkansas. And that was why I went out and to the streets of Las Vegas last Saturday night. And went to buy me a ticket and got that, and decided to do a little roaming for this reason and that. And let me see here where we at the vigil. Lots of interesting people there. The Nation of Islam was there in force. They came and they kind of put up a little barrier around the gathering there. And I left my backpack out there and with all my stuff laid about. And never once did I have to worry that somebody would walk off with something that didn't belong to them. They were looking at, what law is, doing no wrong. And those guys really they're there to, observe and make sure that nothing did go wrong. So respect to those guys there, the Nation of Islam. Got a lot, man, I've got so many notes. On the gun control issue, fair weather friends from the Free Range Report, cowboy hats and camouflage. Now let's go back here to Saturday. All right. So after the rally, I met up with three fellow activists. They're on the left side of the agenda, which doesn't bother me. I think we all have a place to play in this, from left to right and straight down the middle, where I hope I'm walking. So I can respect and call out if I wanted to, or at least I see the failings in the extremes of both sides and missing out completely on what really law is. We went to a vegan, which is a vegan veggie nation in Las Vegas, and we talked for a good long while. Met up with a gal that in Henderson, and she had her shirt made up, says a takeoff from Ramsey Dennison. What happened in Vegas? It's what happened in Henderson. Quite a tale she had to tell, and we did have some undercover cars, and I saw she might have seemed paranoid too, just somebody, but I think after being beaten near to death and having your neck broke would probably make you a little bit paranoid. But it appears to me, from evidence that I saw, she's probably being targeted and it is a victim. So what do you do about that? The corruption runs really deep, and it's been a normal. There's also, I think, statement being made by the Las Vegas Metro officers among the ranks where they failed to endorse Sheriff Joe Lombardo. Most abstained, or many abstained from the vote, and even opening the email that Lombardo did get the majority by some few hundred votes of people that did vote. I think that's pretty much cronyism. Let me see. So there we are from dinner. So from there, I walked around downtown and went and bought me a ticket on the Great Dog. And yes, Hans, it's official now. The ticket's been bought. But before I do go this next week, I've got to start on my petition, something I've never done before, but a nonpartisan, Ed Euling is running for lieutenant governor of Nevada, and he needs to get on the ballot and needing a couple hundred signatures. So I've got to start, and then going to go do a little drive for him this week. Met him, talked to somebody, mutual friend that knows him, and I just like what she had to say about him. And then when I met him, I liked that as well. Let me see. So they met him also. When did I meet him? Last Friday or yes, I believe it was, or Thursday. And he's gone to China. So he's going there on some tourism, bringing tourism to Vegas, working on some stuff like that. But he is on the land council and is I'd say, well, he comes from a libertarian background, so that's a start. And if you know, even for just a platform, um, myself never voted. Still, I see it worthy to stand with this guy right here, and let's get some of the issues out. His issues are land use and sorry about that, and tourism. Mainly, that's where he's focusing. So, and not fair weather friends. So, but let's start in here. Fair weather friends, and from the Free Range Report, you can find them at freerangereport.com. Talking about cowboy hats and camouflage. And Columbia versus Heller. This is let's talk about guns here, and that is that the government is secure in their military force, and we, the people, have the right. They call us radical extremists. Uh, just all kinds of names to discredit. Who wants to be unable to defend themselves? But I would like you to go check them out. You can find out more. It's called Fairweather Friends on Free Range Report. That has to do with the Bundys and how some of these politicians that had distanced themselves are now trying to come back and ride the glory, I guess. What did we have out there? We had radical extremists, mercenaries, and agents. We had a no-fly zone. This is back in 2014 out in Riverside, Bunkerville, Nevada. And what was going on there? First and Second Amendment rights. And what is the difference between a protest and a demonstration? That was a peaceful pushback. It was a demonstration of the rights of the press and of the people to keep and bear arms. I'm going to talk more about that. I just, especially Alan Strider, my good friend, a brother of art in the heart, down in South Africa, and such extreme violence there. How can you not see the need to be able to defend yourself? I really miss that. I really do. We were called rednecks and Al-Qaeda, radical extremists, domestic terrorists, called the virus. Started up there in Oregon. They had to stop the virus from spreading. What is this virus? This idea that we should live free and the government should be constrained by the Constitution. That contract that they have, anybody entering into government is in fact making that contract with the Constitution. That Constitution doesn't do anything for me or you. It's just merely a statement to the fact that we have the right to life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness, which, to retain what you work for. What was out there? What came in 2014? We had BLM and U.S. Forest Rangers. We had private security contractors, mercenaries, snipers, and SWAT teams, and riot police. And they were squelling free speech, expression, and the press. So let's define this standoff and the cattle release, what I call a shoot to kill and cover up. And it goes all the way from Bunkerville to Burns and beyond, and all points in between. Hayes just gave up the fight. They're walking away from their ranch up in northern Nevada. What a shame that is. So what was the standoff? That standoff was done by this criminal element that I just spoke of, the Rangers and the mercenaries, snipers. Yeah, they were there. It's about 200 army of 200. So the standoff was done by the feds, not by the people. I had spoken with Ammon and Jason Patrick in the early morning hours of April the 12th up there in the rally spot on top of the hill by the flags. And it has already been determined from the day before with Gillespie's conversation with Clive and Bundy that the cattle were going to be released. There was a stand down by the feds. They were vacating, but instead we found that they were told to shelter in place after their shoot to kill and cover up operation didn't proceed because of so many hundreds of people that showed up. So the District of Columbia versus Heller, we talk back to that, but let's see. So the cattle release. Let me finish there. The feds are supposed to step down, and when Gillespie came up on stage with Clive and Bundy, and I was right up there on stage in the back and filming that, and listening to his words, he says he got word on his way out the cattle were being released or were released, and basically it was a done deal. You know, he's like, okay, we got a deal. Tell everybody to go home type of deal. And me and you'll talk a little more later. Well, Cliven says, as he's telling him how cows eat cabbage, that ain't the way things are going to go. You're gonna disarm those federal agents, and you're going to tear down the gates that are blocking access for supposed public land. Yeah, not really, was it? District of Columbia versus Heller. There's some long numbers there, and behind that with you can just do your search engine and find out. So one of the ordinary modes by which tyrants accomplish their purposes without resistance is by disarming the people, making it an offense to keep arms. Government is forbidden by any law or proceedings that would destroy the right to keep and bear arms. Summed up. Okay, let me skip over Rebecca Roof right now. We're going to get back to her on the Kieran Suckling, the Center for Biological Diversity. We're going to have a little dance we've been doing since last December. And I mistook what she was saying and thought it was she was talking to me. I'm used to, it's me getting griped at or trolled at or whatever you want to call it. And not actually somebody that's a supporter of the opponent and chiding him. Aloha nui, wanahu. That's big love, family. And we'll come back to that. That's another one of the roles I played, actually. I just touch it real quick. Guy contemplating suicide. I was able to talk to him and relate to him and told him how the pain in a way can be gained and to work through it, and that suicide is definitely a permanent solution to a temporary problem. Things will get better. They'll change and take the pain forward again to strengthen. It's like working out, strengthen your muscles. Got a lot of notes I took from Hal Anthony Behind the Woodshed also from last week, and hopefully we'll come back to that. I'll kind of get back in here to where I'm at to bring Brand in and set this mic up between us. Let me see if this is a good intro. Yeah, I think so. If you make God bleed, people will cease to believe in him. Bloody the water, and the sharks will come. It came out of one of the Iron Man movies. And that was I forget the guy's name, saying it to start. But what is God? It's ideas, notions, and beliefs. And this idea of truth, one might perceive by their own perspective or their worldview. That's where we're going to try to walk through, Brandon and I today. So challenge your rhetoric, and that is a shout out to Cherry Roberts that challenging rhetoric and not getting pigeonholed. And remember this, the early bird gets the worm, but the second mouse gets the cheese. So we might talk a little bit more about how we're going to avoid the traps of getting caught. And we see them laid out for people that they might be calling patriots and others in so-called movements. And remember, there ain't nothing like me except me, and that goes for you too. And I'll tell you what, give me just a minute. And I'm going to put this over here and be going deep, Grimner. But anybody post there in the chat, we'll be monitoring that. And I'm going to move this mic, and Brandon and I are going to have a conversation.
Hurry back.
Right. Wait a minute. I hear you. Wait, coming back. What's that?
I just said hurry back.
Oh, okay, I'm back. Now I'm gone again. Deep.
Okay, dead air is dead. So,
Well, so how's it in chat there? I've not been looking. What anybody? I can't see from here.
same old,
Anything stand
sa-
out?
same old,
Okay,
same old.
people
Just
just
I did share a message for you from the YouTube chat from Valerie Kell that said she's sitting by with the butterfly nets because you're butterflies. So,
thanks, Val. Appreciate that. All right, well, let me hang this mic here between us, and I think where I want to start at is for Sherry, and let's talk about Rex Jones and David Hogg and their little titter tatter. So, what can I say? It's just like they're really not even saying nothing that's really makes sense to me. They're one uh, Tweedledee and Tweedledum, two sides of the coin when you really look at it. Left right paradigm, which, boy, that's bad to get stuck into. I really don't think that what's his name, Jeff or Rex Jones, it is, Alex Jones's son. I don't think I think he's being groomed by his pop. And, you know, custody was given over to Alex Jones's ex-wife, and I guess he's come along and snatched him up. There's probably a lot of brainwashing involved. And what a narcissist Alex Jones is. Big no fan of his at all. He's well, I like him as much as I do Trump, which is not fun at all. All right, let me hang this mic and we'll get a conversation going here. All right, Brand, give us some words in that. Let's get a sound check.
Testing. 1, 2, 3.
sounds good. Go.
Is that good, Graham? Sounding good. Hiller.
Yeah, sounds great. Keep talking.
Good. All right, Heller versus Columbia then. Heller, here we are. So this, you know about Rex Jones, Alex's kid. You see, maybe you've seen the video on challenge. What's your thoughts on this?
Well, I haven't really listened to anything they have to say. I kind of formulate all my own ideas that go way, way back, and they haven't changed any as far as our right to keep and bear arms and defend ourselves when somebody tries to take our God-given rights from us. So, if you look around the world and you look what's happening, for example, in South Africa, Rhodesia there, Zimbabwe, what's going on with those white farmers, and they're pretty helpless. They're a minority, and in this country, the Constitution is supposed to protect the minority.
Well, let's pull it back in first to the school shootings and this David Hogg calling for the Second Amendment to be done away with.
Well, I was leading up to that.
Okay.
You see what happens. There's evidently there were some children that were murdered, and I'm not going to get into a debate whether they were or were not. You got two types of false flags, and it was a false flag to disarm the American citizen. There's no doubt in my mind. I've been watching this over and over and over through the decades, and the deep state is ruthless. They don't care. They will kill anybody and everybody to get their way. So as far as David Hogg, he's just a useful idiot. I think he's an arrogant little punk. He's been bought and sold. His daddy was an FBI agent, an active FBI agent, or still is. And there's just so many discrepancies there with his story and his background and things that are going on that, people, you should be pretty transparent. People should be able to see through that whole scheme. And yet, the mainstream media takes it and runs with it. And you got all these emotional aspects to the whole thing. I mean, of course, nobody wants to see anybody get hurt, especially nobody wants to see anybody get killed. And so they play up the emotions of the whole thing. And there's just too many people out there that will go with their first knee-jerk reaction. And they'll jump on that bandwagon and see how far it goes. Well, it seems to be fading pretty fast in this situation. And they're getting pretty desperate, and they're squealing like a bunch of stuck pigs out there that they want their way, and they're going to stomp and scream and holler and try to demonize anybody that supports firearms or supports the National Rifle Association or any organization that supports firearms. The fact of the matter is, it's really disgusting that they think they can disarm the average citizen and then basically take us all off to the FEMA camps. Well, it's not going to happen, and this little punk needs to get that through his mind, and people that are listening to him or following him need to get that through their mind also. It's not going to happen.
So what about Rex Jones? He looks like a little punk kid to me as well, just spouting off on the other side of the spectrum.
Yeah, I don't know much about Rex Jones, to be honest about it, except for he's Alex Jones' son. And like you said, I got probably more respect for Alex Jones than you do, but my respect for him is also somewhat limited over the years. I've seen certain things that he's done that I don't agree with. However, I think in general his message has been beneficial to this country. He's on the cutting edge of exposing a lot of things, and I appreciate that. I know he just tends to take it to a certain point and then he backs down. I think he's just gotten too comfortable. He's probably very financially well off. And, you get kind of lazy when that happens. You're not as apt to, be as daring and take as many risks when you get too comfortable in life. And I think that's where Alex Jones has finally ended up. He's just gotten to the point where, he's got a multi-million-dollar business there, and I don't think he wants to really risk it.
Well, there is a big custody thing going on, and his wife's on Twitter talking about that. Okay, I lost my place here where I was going. From Hog and Rex. So just a couple of kids just shouting, shooting off their mouth. I don't know how old this Hog guy is, but I think he's a little bit older than a kid. Really, really just not using any kind of trivium in the method that he wished to debate. It was full of fallacies and false starts and premises. So I don't give credit to either one of those guys. And that's my report on that for Sherry Roberts. Now I'm going to talk about being armed, being able to defend yourself. And so run, little rabbit, or stay put. We're talking about fight or flight. And freeze has been added. And a lot of people would suppose that freeze is or the websites that I was looking at, that's mostly what I got covered. It was kind of like the fainting goat or the animal going into shock and just laying down to die. There's also a freeze of camouflage, like the rabbit, to sit still and not get jumped on by running out crazy down the trail and getting pounced on by a coyote. We have two branches of the in the brain there, the automatic nervous system that deals with threat and recovery. So you can look at the how animal kingdom works in that. So what if a cow had paws, I said, or hands instead of hooves? And what if you had opposing thumbs and a trigger finger? And what if you had access to guns? Because my same friend Alan was talking about steak, eating steak, and had made post over about nobody should have a gun like that, an AR-15, or people don't even realize it ain't much more than a 22, which you said maybe they should have a 22, but isn't that really what an AR-15 is?
Yeah, it's a 22 caliber, so just a higher velocity and a different bullet.
There you go, right there. So all through that thread there, people coming over to try to put down the person's right to own a gun. I went over and I copied from Cindy Lake here in Vegas, running for County Commission G had some pretty good stuff to say. I copied it over, but basically, to what degree do you have the right to defend yourself? Are you going to be limited by the weapons? Now, one gal came over and she made some good point that these weapons are antiquated. So, I mean, if it came into a shooting match against government, likely without certain things happening, then the people are going to be gunned down. But that's not the point, whether you do or don't. It's the fact that you have that, again, the difference between protesting and demonstrating. So whether you had a air rifle or a 50 caliber or a Sherman tank, you're not going to outarm the government, but you still can make a demonstration. And that's what saved the Bundy's lives, because make no mistake about it, they were going to be killed. Just like the people down in Waco were killed, just like they shot on the folks up there in Ruby Ridge and so many other places. We'll be talking about the cop watch I did a little bit more here, but let's continue on with the right to self-defense and this hog on the plate and the debate and about taking people's guns away. So it ain't no fun when the rabbit's got the gun. Now, what do you do if let's talk about the cop watch. If like when I called 911 for that woman and I saw her afterwards and she and her companion were beaten severely, had I had a gun, see, I could have went right on up in there and helped in the rescue and, called 911 and said going in or whatever. So instead, which I still believe I did the right thing in all that I did, I stayed as a post to watch the exit and to be able to report if this guy's fleeing, right? All I know is I heard a woman screaming for help, being attacked, big punches and slaps, loud sounds, and I couldn't get straight to him. So after not finding a cop, I called 911. And when they arrived, they went past or setting up a perimeter, and I stayed put. And when they start coming to my direction, I raised my hat in the air and my phone in the other and put it out above me and in front of me and with my hands up, and in the meantime, I froze. Just stay in place, right? Don't jump out and be a target. Now, this is where I want to go back and step back just a little bit on all the people getting shot by cops. Generally, there's a catalyst that causes that. And like it or not, we are where we're at. More people, more cops, more bullets, more crimes, more mistakes. So the best advice I give is, you're saying the cops need to change. Okay, true that. But also our encounter with cops have to change. If we're being stopped, you don't want to be making sudden movements. Freeze, stay in place. Don't get pounced on, right? Keep your hands in plain sight. Establish the fact that, they're secure in their safety. I don't care how you want to look at that and look at the blue coats and so forth. But like I said, we have what we have. We are where we're at. We're in an occupation. So there's certain rules that apply. Now, the ending the story there, I waited till she came out. I didn't try to do any interviews or be like interfering with the investigation. I just went up and told her that I heard her cries and I'm glad that she's okay, even though she was beaten pretty bad and her companion in an ambulance. So cops, that they're out there doing a job, and if you're having an interaction with a cop, it almost lies, well, it does, fully lies on you and how your actions and your responses. So the one guy, he was a homeless guy. That was one I observed as a cop watch. And I think because they saw me and a couple other people watching, of course it was a stellar performance that in the back alleys may have been otherwise. The guy continued to engage in conversation. The cop kept asking him any number of questions. So, not knowing his rights or knowing his place more aptly, he complied with everything, search and so forth, which honestly, I would do the same thing. just so I ain't got to worry about, them wondering if I'm going to reach in and pull out a gun or something. Go ahead, pat me down. But that's me, and that's how I interact with cops. And by the time we're done, the cop's asking, "Okay, is it okay if I can go now?" Because I will engage you in conversation. Being armed, what if the cow had a trigger finger? You think he'd be getting that near as much?
Well, we're kind of the cows nowadays. You talk about demonstrations and protest. What happened at the Bundy Ranch was an educational process for the BLM. And so many times, in so many ways, the BLM, Bureau of Land Management, or, any of these government agencies, they are compartmentalized on a need-to-know basis, and they're going to just do what they do so they can keep their jobs. Well, when you have a situation where you have 1,000 or more people rise up against them in a very, very public way, well, that's another type of education process. Nobody can tell me that the BLM hasn't, the rank and file has not learned something from the Bundy standoff. And I'm sure a lot of them went back and did some research, and especially the court cases where, it's been proven that the BLM and FBI lied. Even the Metro Police Department, they lied, and it all came out. So there's an education process there. They see that their leaders had lied through their teeth and put them in a position that they would have to go directly against their fellow citizens, their fellow man. And I can't help but feel that has left a sour taste in their mouth. We saw some grandstanding by certain BLM people, and they end up looking ridiculous, especially a BLM agent, Swanson. And he was, he put on quite an act on the stand. I look at it as just a pure act, grandstanding. I think the guy's got some, when you get right down to it, he's probably got some emotional problems. He spent some time, in Iraq. And so I wouldn't doubt he's got PTSD. This is the same gentleman that wanted the traffic to stop so he could take a shot at Eric Parker. And, and yet he was talking about the children that he saw on a school bus, and he starts crying. And next thing you know, he's not crying anymore, but he's talking about how he wants to shoot Eric Parker in the head. Okay, there's something fundamentally wrong with people like that. And I think that the BLM, the government in general, likes to hire people like that. Okay, so, but his compatriots there and the people that he worked with, I think there's an education process taking place. And they got to go back and look at this as individuals, not just as a government, but as individuals. What were they actually engaged in? What were they actually trying to do? And, they look pretty darn bad to the point that, we don't see them. We don't see them in that area, at least. We don't see them anymore. I guess they're harassing some people right now in Pahrump. And that's kind of an interesting situation. And that might just blow up in their face also. They've been, across the state and across the western states, they've been harassing people, stealing their land, doing whatever they can to take all the natural resources away from the people, make it impossible. And now, when I say this, make it impossible for them to actually make a living and have industry and things like that. The rank and file, I don't believe, understands what's going on, but their leaders will certainly do. The people that are getting them the directives, such as Neil Corns, which he's no longer there, but he was being manipulated by Harry Reid, the state senator, and they had all their little pet projects going on. And this is the type of stuff that the rank and file they just don't get it. They don't understand it. And then when somebody tries to tell them, they call it some great big conspiracy theory, and they don't want to believe it. It's called Stockholm Syndrome. They just want to go along with their masters. So the Bundy Ranch standoff was a wonderful thing. You compare that, contrast that to what's happening in South Africa, and I really like to, get that information out because we have white folks there that, been there for hundreds of years, and they're being slaughtered by a communist socialist government, which just happens to be, of course, black. All right. And it's a really interesting paradigm in that the white people have been fleeing, going to places like Australia, who's got plans to accept more of them. And now you have the black government who is screaming like mashed cats because they don't have the expertise, knowledge, and know-how to run the farms. So they're running out of food. Oh, isn't that wonderful? In my personal opinion is, if a military doesn't go in there and deliver these people from their, this corrupt government of Zimbabwe, then they have to be given asylum. And I will take as many of those type of people as we can get. They're productive. They're good people. They tend to be Christians. And Australia is doing, they got some bills and proposals to do exactly that. Here's an amazing thing. Who do you think's opposing in Australia that these white farmers who can go and make that land productive, land right now that's not under any kind of production, these people have the knowledge and know-how to be able to do that. Who do you think's opposing that? This is going to blow your mind. Well, the Nation of Islam, the Muslims there, totally against it. The same people that'll have a dozen kids and sit on welfare and bleed the system dry. They do not want people to come in, white folk, to come in and start producing something on that land. Now, holy cow, how long can this type of system where you have people that are draining the system and they're outbreeding, I said last time they have like the average Muslim family has 6 children as opposed to the average Christian family's got like 2. Well, I've been corrected on that here recently that they're closer to 12. Well, if that's the case, it's not going to take very long before the system is completely drained dry. They're going to take over everything. They will take over the government, and they will institute Sharia law, and that is their plan. I mean, they've been vocal about it. They've come right out and told us that. So, in this country, United States of America, where we still can have our firearms, there's going to eventually something like this will come to a head. And, I thank God that our founding forefathers decided that we should have the means and wherewithal to defend ourselves against not only a corrupt nation, corrupt governments, but also just a totally corrupt people. An ideology that simply does not fit with our Constitution, our way of life. And so you can see what's happening in these different countries where this sort of thing takes place. And I, for one, don't want to have to go down that road. So anyhow.
Well, how about the federal judge, thanks, Grimner, upholding the Massachusetts ban on assault weapons? I believe Hal Anthony was talking about the bump stocks, and I was going to move to cure on suckling, but actually let me back up and do a rundown. This is last Sunday's broadcast from Behind the Woodshed with Hal Anthony, BTWRLM 260, and is the largest limited hangout in the history of mankind. It's really your silence, isn't it? So we are under an attack. And so where do we go, to defense or offense? Your silence will determine that. Some of the things that Hal talked about this last week were the interweb, the blockchain being a honeypot, and the battlefield of with your identity and the grounds that you're upon. You want to take this here? Let me give you that. Mm-hmm. Behavioral control tool or behavioral tool, right, to move us along. And that's what we really see so often in this societal engineering, social engineering, talking about Aikido and the use of force against them and these people, this international forces of occupation, so-called stakeholders and stockholders and big corporation. It's a corporation nation, and we've gone worldwide. So we see how the stakeholder destroys your life and your livelihood and costumes and crimes. Al talks about being duped in the adulterated April Fools of the Israeli condition, war on terror, Syria, Turkey, the Kurds, Trump, and France, and for the U.S. pulling out of Syria. Taking a look at the judiciary interpretation of the Constitution, the executive branch, the Department of Justice, and the Fed Registry. 10 years for not turning your bump stock in. Government shall not infringe. On to compare the non-response. See, we now have a time for comment period, the due process, making a rule, the subject matter, the process. So do the research, make the record, sue for injunction in the civil procedure. Go to federalregistry.gov, federalregistry.gov. So at the same thing, when we saw a time to set the record, and we heard crickets on the cannabis and the kratom and the clean water and fluoride. Be a cricket or do something else. So we see there is no jurisdiction for the restriction of gun rights to make illegal arms. There's not there. The Second Amendment. Make the record against the government encroachment and the equity action against your rights. On to being human, RFID chips, things to come, and facts. That's big data, registration, control, psychosocial research, and dark patterns, and how websites hook you. And I think I had some more right there, but
these governors that there's a handful of them across this country right now. Kate Brown is one that jumps out. What's this with the last name Brown?
There's a lot of them.
Yeah, I got Governor Brown in California, Anna J. Brown as attorney or as a judge. Hey, I got these governors, and I don't know who they think they are, that they can go and just disarm their constituents, the populace of their state. The people have got to decide for themselves how far they're going to let this go. Okay. And nobody can tell them where the line is. Where do you say enough's enough, and we're not going to back off any further? I think when people have that news flash and they see the plans, these insidious plans that these politicians have for the people, then that line all of a sudden becomes in the sand, becomes more solid. So there's an education process for the people. Now, right now, and for how long we've just been pushing paper through the court systems to fight all this. Well, they know how to get around an awful lot of that. And they haven't got completely around it, as we've seen with these court cases. But let's just say for a second that they would have found all these men guilty, the exculpatory evidence, the GIGO violations weren't brought forth by these whistleblowers. So, we would have never known just how bad it was behind the scenes with the FBI and the Bureau of Land Management. We now know what they were up to.
Many of us did know, and you knew, of course, a great deal as well.
Sure.
That was not being allowed to be spoken of.
Yeah.
And the whole, from the very beginning, the guys are like, look, this is what happened. And it's like when you bypass certain steps in the Trivium method, and instead of going from your grammar, logic, and rhetoric to your rhetoric, people start out with a rhetoric. They try to build a false narrative. If you're after that rabbit, or if that rabbit's after you, need to know which way to run or which way it runs, right?
Well, I think we bought some time with these court cases, and as probably a lot of your listeners know, Ryan Bundy is running for governor. And now, if we can get that thing taking place, if Ryan Bundy does indeed become the governor of the state of Nevada, that's going to be some amazing stuff. You will see some major changes, and it could be infectious to other states, especially the state of Utah, where Ryan Bundy has a lot of his roots is in southern Utah, and there's a lot of people there in southern Utah are pretty fed up with the Bureau of Land Management, and they're ready to take action. So, you were just talking earlier about fair weather friends. Well, I'll take whoever I can get personally. We need every single human being to take a stand. So these fair weather friends, okay, welcome aboard. Okay, so now they're in southern Utah. You look at a lot of those people that are fair weather friends and look at their positions that they have in state and local governments. So things are changing, and they're changing the dynamics are changing quite fast.
They really are. It's beginning to spread, this virus or build like a snowball. And what do we see against it? The order out of chaos, dark patterns. So finishing out there was a lot more to come. Google and Facebook, the data on you and the continued abuse, that's not cool. Sundays at 12 p.m. on the left coast, that's out here in the Pacific side of the United States of America. Dark patterns, yeah, and was the largest hangout in human history. BTW RLM 260, Sundays at 12 o'clock, right here on reallibertymedia.com, rlmradio.xyz, and thanks to Hal behind the woodshed. I want to jump over here and talk about another little battle, and then let's swing back into the other reasons a person ought to be able to defend themselves. But let's go look at Kieran Suckling, because I think it's so cute how he likes to dance and lead. So I just let him ever since we met back in December 20th at the federal courthouse in Las Vegas. He came back for a granted peaceful pushback, counter protest. And so the moves that he made really did set the rules of engagement. Little bit of friction, right? So it's kind of like a shove off, but right shoulder to shoulder. And he was looking for and instigating for a violent response. That's the fear and expectancy and setting rules. So what I observed in one of the guys that was with him was a fear in his face, standing there braced for the inevitable smackdown. Remind me of somebody in prison, just scared little punk. But he was going to stand boldly and bravely and take it. And that's what they were pushing for. They only got verbal violence, in a sense, and none physical. So I've heard several marshals at the courthouse say how well, what'd they say, Brent? How well
mannered,
yeah,
that we were. You missed Kieran Suckling the first time he came out, which was the very first day that the trial started, and they weren't so cordial or so nice. In fact, they tried to incite violence. In one case, I don't know all their names, but one of them had a bullhorn and pretty much hit David Fleeman in the face with it. Okay, and David Fleeman shoved it back in his face, and so it was getting pretty interesting there. And now the time that you saw, okay, they had really changed their whole attitude, because how many people did we have out there? Okay, before we had equal numbers, but we ended up getting at times 150 to 200 people out there. So in the time that you're referring to, I'd say we have at least 50 people, and maybe more in the courtroom, probably close to 100 people total.
A lot of people there that day.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to be brave. It's a lot harder for them to be vocal, and and jump to violence in that situation. So they're pretty quiet at that point.
Well, I think for myself, I made some missteps. I figured out what they were doing after they already did it. And by that time, it was like I peeled away. Now there were some great example of response from Joshua Martinez. Man, he really shamed me when I sat there and saw how intelligent he was in talking to these folks and in a kind manner.
Mm-hmm.
But as I said, Huron Suckling Center for Biological Diversity, he set the dance for he and I to to the tune, anyways. Well, who is this guy? Who is this? He's a liar. I'll tell you that.
Well, he gets these government grants.
Yeah. Well, he sues the government.
Yeah.
He makes his money. He's an
Sure.
NGO.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So pinch a penny and stretch the truth. Squeeze a nickel till the buffalo shits. Now, he made some comment over about and one of his followers, I guess, Rebecca Ruth. I thought she was talking to me because, like I was saying earlier, I thought, well, anytime I'm here and seeing any criticism is obviously for me, and I appreciate it, really, I do, and try to take lessons. So let me read what Rebecca wrote. She says, "Why do you so quickly resort to insult? So insulted you first." Typos in there. Anyways, respond with your intelligence. You are so educated and have such an influential position in the world. Why respond like a kid in a playground? Fight. In a playground fight. Scroll down a bit on my feed she's talking about, and you will see multiple retweets and likes. So he says, what I got to do? Pay buy my followers? Said I don't see any likes or retweets on my Twitter. So making up with lies to start with. Again, you're a liar. You're a liar, Huron. And you don't like to dance. You don't want me to lead, so you'll come with those rules that you set. I'm fine with them. I like to dance. I sure do. So Rebecca Ruth goes on to say, by the way, I liked your tweet. She's talking to Huron. Just not your choice of interacting with others. You can be a better person. Well, I thought she was talking to me. I guess I didn't read close enough. I said, thank you for the kind correction. She says then, tweet was meant for Huron, but we all have something to learn. And a little bit more, but sorry about the confusion. But anyways, this is a setup for the takedown. Huron Suckling and Center for Biological Diversity, and how Mr. Suckling stretches the truth to stretch his budget. That's an NGO, that non-governmental organization suing the government, and where, in fact, the tortoise is benefited by cattle on the land. So, Huron, you lie. So, yeah, he did. Huron did set the pace or the rules of engagement when he came in protest at the Bundy trial last December. A peaceful pushback with intended friction. I like to call it a dance. Now, the short of the story is I normally stick to the trivium and nonviolent communication, but poking the tortoise is fun.
Well, I think it's important to point out how Huron Suckling gets his money to do all this. It initially starts off with a government grant. As I looked into this, they get a government grant, and then they start taking some of that money and they advertise. And usually they'll bring out their favorite little animal that looks like it's being abused. And of course, it tugs at the heartstrings of people, and they start sending donations in. And at some point in time, to get enough money that they start actually, like you say, they start suing the government. But the seed money all started with our tax dollars.
Really good.
And then next thing you know, they got their people on the inside, the deep state, these federal judges. Yep. And so they go along with it. They allow it to come into their court. And then they make a ruling on it. And that's exactly what happened in Clive and Bundy. This whole process starts off with a few radical people, getting a government grant. And this thing turns into a beast, a huge beast after a while, and which jeopardizes not just Cliven's rights to life and all those things, but also ours. Okay, we all come under that same blanket of government corruption that literally started with our tax dollars going to the wrong place.
Yeah, pretty amazing. That is in fact the truth. I believe it was in '93 or '97 when we initiated this Endangered Species Act of the tortoise being a problem out there. Now, I spent quite a bit of time out here, out in the desert, almost 40 days altogether, and did an investigation, looked around and seen what's what, talked to folks. Pretty great experience there. Sheriff of Riverside, ghost town. I was for a while. Retired now. Carry on, citizens. I found some tortoise burrows, and we went out with Cliven Bundy and we looked at how the desert, all this plant life out here, all this ecosystem is really and truly benefited not only by the cattle, but the off-roader. He gave a story. He was talking to a reporter and his wife had come out. They were riding around the country. And so they're stopped out there, and he goes over and picks old piece of sage grass he would call burro brush, and then goes and picks the very same plant just a couple of feet away there and brings them both back and says, now which one do you think the cattle would prefer to eat? Of course, both of them point this real lush piece of foliage here. And he says, now what do you think the difference is? Well, they says, well, maybe the cow ate that one down and grew back, because they were already catching on, okay? They weren't no dummies. And he says, actually, he said that bush over there was run flat down to the ground by an off-roader. I want to tell you, there is hundreds and hundreds of miles of the same repetitive landscape and ecosystem that is mostly unused by anything. However, when you make some incorporation, if you look at the natural order thing, everything's running down. What, 99% of all species are extinct? You think that the tortoise is not going to go extinct if left alone out there to his own device, since so many other things have been removed from his habitat, whereas the cattle on the land will replace a great amount of element to restore and make more habitable, better use of the forage and the land, just by the mere fact of them grazing on the land. And that browse that they reduce back and it comes back becomes more palatable for other animals, from the little old grasshopper and doodlebug up to the bighorn sheep. I see one. Yeah. Where are you going? Oh, there he is.
Well, let me underscore what you just said there. Now, I was born and raised in southern Nevada, and I've been all over these hills as a kid. Even this one Sunrise Mountain back here, which looks pretty darn desolate. I told you earlier, there are trails up there where animals had, for, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of years, used to traverse this country all the time. Now, I don't know what happened to those animals, but there used to be a whole lot more of them than there are now. That used to all these, maybe they were all just desert bighorn sheep. I don't know. But I think you hit on a really good thing there, that some of the animals that used to really benefit the tortoises are long gone, and they're being, the cattle is going to fill that niche to help them survive.
Absolutely. Not only just the grazing on the land, but also the dung back into the ground. Now, and then the hoof prints, when they're running large thousands of sheep across there in a number of days, Cliven said that's where, the most productive area were for tortoises. Mm-hmm. Where the tortoise was most abundant anyways.
They were eating smart pills.
Yeah, exactly. Eating smart pills. Now, some of y'all have heard that story about a friend of mine come out to the country, and we were walking along the trail in the woods. He says, what are them things on the ground down there? It was, rabbit droppings. I said, let me have a little fun. I said, well, them smart pills. He said, what? I said, sure enough. he was down there and had gathered up a shirt pocket and the mouth full of them. And he goes to smacking his lips. And he said, you know, this tastes like crap. I said, they're working already.
You're getting smarter already.
Now, we've talked about, you and I, a week or so ago about locking up that carbon. All right. So going into dung and going to the ground, you're holding that and releasing it back as nutrient to the ground. And besides the fact that other animals or species eat it from the tortoise and the doodle bug, you know, he rolls a little poop up in a ball and buries it in the ground and puts some little babies in there to eat their way to happiness.
Well, some years ago, I was dove hunting, and this is further north of here, about at least 100 miles. And I came across a tortoise eating a big old fresh cow patty. It was really disgusting. I was like, what the hell? But that was my first encounter. And he was just chowing down on a big old fresh cow patty.
Well, you've seen dogs eat cow poop.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of nutrition in there. And besides the benefit of the plant material itself, the nutritional and the medicinal qualities in there. So dogs are eating grass. But as you know, my brother's dog, he come out to Arkansas, and he's eating some bull dung there, some bull Durham. And it just freaked him out. You know, I've talked about this in the past. It is a survival food, you know. Can you imagine then that perhaps coyotes and wolves in the wild would eat?
I wouldn't doubt it. From some of the reports that I've been able to see that Cliven has, is there's actually enzymes in there. There's, of course, there's a lot of moisture in there. There's a lot of pre-digested plant matter that the tortoises can take advantage of. So why can't other animals take advantage of those same nutrients? I think, I really do. I believe that, you know, it's really gross to us, and we have a hard time imagining that sort of thing taking place. But in the animal world, that's common. That's very common.
Sure, yeah. So any number of canines, perhaps the cats, bobcat, bighorn, the cougar, the mountain lion. There's a lot of diversity. People don't realize that the desert, what diversity it has. Now, when you go out into the arid regions and over many, many miles, you know, well, a mountain lion will roam a couple 100-mile range. Less so for coyotes. I don't recall their how far they go, but anyways, so you get out so far from water, and basically you only have things like, well, there's one beetle, stink beetle, I think, or can't remember, big old black beetle out there, and he'll raise up and catch the morning dew and let that run down. And I've seen them do it, you know, out here in the desert. Pretty cool creatures, man. They make tracks. They go, and you can follow them around. That's pretty neat. And that reminds me of the movie The Lonesome Dove with the Kickapoo tracker. Follow bugs and ants and spiders. And he was a tracker and just liked to track. Bren, you're a hunter, so you understand the pattern and movement. And I think that's one aspect that gives you your perspective more credence, because you realize how patterns move.
Well, Cliven's water systems were absolutely perfect for the indigenous wildlife. Let me say that again. Absolutely perfect, because there's seepage. It's high up on the mountain. These aren't free-running streams or creeks, but seepage. And, you know, Cliven was able to tap into those. And as they cascade down the mountain, then they would come to the surface through his plumbing and his little reservoirs. And, you know, you'd have numerous little reservoirs. Now, there's a really interesting thing that happened many years ago with the desert bighorn sheep in the state of Nevada. The miners had taken a lot of these streams and creeks across the state and were using them for mining operations, and they actually destroyed them. They were rerouted deep into the earth, and those animals that were using that water became extinct in those areas. Well, back in the 50s, the fishing game of the state of Nevada decided to try to fix that situation. And what they did is they came up with a different type of watering source, a watering system, and it does have some drawbacks. And the biggest one is over here in the Sheep Mountain range. You don't have a cascading effect where the water comes to the surface. It just comes to the surface in one place. All right. So the animals got to always go back to that small area. It's like I'm going to say it's no bigger than 3 foot by 3 foot, where this water comes up to the surface from these guzzlers. And for those that don't know, there's some very large tanks with an apron that catches this moisture, whether it be rain or condensation, and it feeds these tanks. And then these tanks are higher than where the water source actually comes up. They run some plumbing underground. It comes up so many yards away, and then the animals use that to water. Well, there's a real problem with that, and they eventually found out the hard way, in that the lions, the mountain lions in southern Nevada, they're not stupid, but they would just sit there and wait for the sheep, the desert bighorn sheep, to come in and water, and they'd ambush them. So you had this whole mountain range. It's called Sheep Mountain. It's 90 miles from north to south. It's a very large mountain range, and it used to have, from what I understand, the largest population of desert bighorn sheep. Well, they were wiped out, and Nevada Fish and Game decided that they would transplant sheep from other areas and see if they would take hold. Well, all they were doing is feeding the lions. So they've had to, those sheep have never come back to the level that they once were. But now, if you take a look at Cliven's system, his watering system is far, far superior than what the Nevada Fish and Game was doing. And so up there in that Mountain Bunker, and which is part of the Arizona Strip, and that's a very special area, actually, the Arizona Strip is. They had some thriving populations of desert bighorn sheep, mule deer, and of course all of your carnivores, your predators, and they were all doing well. There was a nice balance there simply because of the water. Now here comes the Bureau of Land Management, and I was able to witness this and document it with some other people. Angus McIntosh, foremost authority on land rights issues, was there. John Lamb, Shauna Cox, a few others. And we went up there to document what the Bureau of Land Management had done in their destruction. And they had literally tore out hundreds of miles of plumbing that was used.
Well, a lot of that right there, that destruction came from a flood. They went up.
No. That's recent.
They tore up.
We went way before the flood, and they had already tore all that stuff out. Yeah.
Well, I know the corral up there. They destroyed that. There was I don't know how much pipe they tore up.
Quite a bit. They had their front loaders up there, and they piled it up in big areas, which we were able to document.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we were able.
So
to
they went along and actually ripping the line up out of the ground.
Out of the ground.
Because the piping system goes for many miles. Mm-hmm. And they go down and they break off, and they go down and for many more miles to another tank, mm-hmm. And distributing water where else otherwise life would go back down to the little doodle bug and the lizard out there. So then you do have a huge population of quail, hundreds per tank area, and all the other animals that come to benefit.
Well, when we were up there, I did not find one deer track. I didn't find one sheep track. I didn't find one quail track or chukar track, and I was looking. I didn't even find a coyote track.
That was all where there was previous water tanks that had been mm-hmm. destroyed. Yeah, that's what we're looking at here. It's not to preserve life. This, they come with these court orders and suddenly declare that that which was being supposedly managed, which that's all convoluted, going back, where it originated, the Taylor Grazing Act and before, for settlement and law and bringing peace, defining the boundaries. So what was not given over was what was actually property that is owned. That is the what's growing on top of the ground for cows to chew on. Matter of fact, there is not even a near enough cows out there on the land, and any supposed damage to the land or the tortoise is ridiculous. What you will encounter, and I've lived out in open range, Arizona. You know, the cows would cattle would come right through there, and they're going to munch on your grapevine and anything else you. So this is the rule. So if you want to have a house in 5 acres out in the middle of the desert, and you say you've got a well and water rights or whatever, growing a big old nice garden, the cows are going to come in there and eat it. Now you have the responsibility to fence them out. Out on the highway, on the open road, open range, you're not supposed to hit any cows on the road. Your responsibility not to, just like an elk out there, you know. It reminds me of a story. Remember where they wanted to change the deer crossing? The woman had written a letter. It's not that it could be a much better place to have the deer cross.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, that's the way a lot of people think. You know, if the mainstream media had gotten out there and showed, the destruction of the wildlife that took place, people would have been up and screaming like crazy across this nation. You know, if they were just driven around with taking a helicopter and showed the dry bones of the deer and the sheep and all the other animals that died because of that. And you got all your little critters too. You know, rabbits, rats, mice that need that water. It's a tremendous ecosystem that was destroyed there. But if had that been brought to the light, I think you would have had public opinion would have been decisively on Cliven's side. But then there you go, the mainstream media. They don't want this information brought out because it's not part of their agenda.
Yeah, so it is false fronts. And again, Hal Anthony talks and he exposes how these things work, give the notice. So I did share a couple of posts from Center for Biological Diversity and Tom Lockavar Stewart, Resurrect the Republic, Truth Media. Well, I was laying out a little bait there, you know, and also to challenge your rhetoric, bring in a little cross-examination. And I told him, I said, you've got to. He was talking about snakes because that was what the Center for Biological Diversity was talking about, protecting a snake, and he said that it was full of snakes there at the Center for Biological Diversity, and Huron suckling being a big old slithering snake and a liar.
Would you ever notice that they do exactly the opposite of what their title is, Center for Biological Diversity? Well, look what they actually did with the BLM. They just did the exact opposite on Bunker Mountain.
Yeah, destroyed life.
Yeah.
It's generally what the black is white. We are living in, 1984, Orwellian world, for sure.
Yeah. It's hard to find the truth anymore. The press, the media, that was their original job, is to report the facts, report the truth, so that people would be informed. Well, now they're just nothing but, your mainstream media is nothing but a big propaganda machine owned by a handful of people, such as George Soros, Rupert Murdoch, people of that nature. And what are they doing? It's total deception to the American people. It's very rarely they tell the truth about any subject. It's always a lie.
Yeah, even some of the better ones, like the RJ, that's been really instrumental in bringing out some of the stuff being sealed here in Vegas, for one. They still fail in their reporting. And I think I might take a little more direct approach in asking them to retrieve the letter to the editor from back last year on this bicycling riding on the sidewalk, because let's have truth in media if you want to have accountability. So when I get criticized, especially if I've fallen for the fake news a time or two, clipped out this and that made something look something else, like something else, but then I come back and say, yep, I fell for it. But you don't see that out of mainstream. They keep compounding their lies and propagating them.
Do you have any ideas what's going to come out in these next whistleblower documents?
No, I've not heard, but I would assume that it's going to be a reiteration of what Wooten had said.
Well, Cliven told me himself when he was exonerated. In fact, it was when we were all out in front of the police department there. Yeah. He said, "You have no idea how much you don't know, but it's been hidden from you all." And he said, "I can't tell you." He said, "But he said it is an awful lot." So, I mean, you know, you don't want your imagination to run wild on you, but I think there's going to be things in there that's really going to stun some people.
Yeah, but how well will Judge Gloria Navarro be able to keep it buried? Do you think she will, or?
Well, she's definitely trying. She's doing right now. It's all sealed still.
Where did I read this from? Might have been I can't remember, but when the court's closed out like that, there's no call to be able to keep anything sealed like that.
I understand.
So what are we talking about? National security. I mean, this is all tied together in a really, really big way. From the Uranium One to the Clintons.
It's all connected.
Harry Reid. It's very, very deep, this dark state and our deep state. And that's what we're looking at.
From what I understand, they've been able to do this up to 5 years. If the trial was still going, I don't think so. Okay. But all this stuff has pretty much ceased. So from what I understand, for 5 years, well, you know, that's just about typical of the government, because what they do is they hide things for as long as they can until it all blows over. Nobody's paying any attention anymore. And that's how they get away with so much. I mean, a good example now is a lot longer than 5 years, but the assassination of John F. Kennedy. That was a lid put on that for 50 years.
50 years.
And now all the culprits, what happened to all the culprits? Well, they're all gone. They're died or whatever. So they never did face justice. So this is a tactic of the United States government, the court systems, to hide things to the point or for long enough that when it does come out, either people are forgotten about it, they don't care anymore, it doesn't affect their lives anymore, or the culprits are all gone. They're all dead. So now I was sitting there thinking, I read this just recently on one of the Bundy pages that typically they can do this for 5 years. Well, what happens at the end of 5 years? Let's just say that Trump's no longer the president, and we got, we end up with a different president. There's so many things that can happen in 5 years to take this off the table where nobody pays any more attention to it. Probably one of the best examples I know is the FLDS, the Fundamental Latter-day Saints there in Texas. When they invaded them, they took like 400 of their children there. They took their genome. They did all kinds of things to them. And it was kept a secret, the report, because like you say, it's an ongoing investigation, which disgusts me every time I hear that. We can't release the information, no evidence. It's an ongoing investigation. This went on for something like 2 to 4 years before the information was released. And it turns out it was all bogus. They put those people through pure hell, okay, on just totally bogus stuff by some young gal, 16-year-old gal in Denver, Colorado, called in a complaint. It had nothing to do with those people in Texas. And so they use it as an excuse to get their nose, the bureaucrats get their nose into, especially if there's something they want there. They will use any excuse they can to come in and do something. Well, in this case, they're going to wait 5 years. What's going to happen in 5 years? All of us will be on with their lives or doing something entirely different. And it's not going to mean near as much as it does right now. It won't have the same effect. It won't have that same powerful effect that we can straighten things out if it gets released right now.
Shoot to kill and cover up. It carries over. The government operations, anybody can see. If you can't see how we are occupied in every aspect of our lives, we're licensed and have permits and permission and paying fees, taking rights away, and people begging for it. It just boggles my mind that, especially Alan, how all the arts that you've done on war and piles of bodies. What they do? What Mao and take the guns, Stalin, Hitler, take the guns, then kill you and cover you up in big old pits, just like they did the cattle out there in Bunkerville. Shoot to kill and cover up.
And this pattern is very consistent through the ages for the last 200 years. Every time the American people, or not just American people, excuse me, or any people get disarmed, genocide follows in every situation. Why do we think, or why do the American people think they're immune to that?
That boggles my mind, indeed.
Exactly.
And not only for demonstrating your right in standing up, and at least in the face of government by that Second Amendment. Also, what about the fact if somebody attacks you? You're talking about the violence in South Africa. You know, women raped and killed, and people beaten and robbed. And don't think it don't happen here in America, right?
Well, the good thing about America, it does happen. However, there's a much higher risk for those people that do those type of activities being 6 foot under, as opposed to another country. And that enters the psyche of any criminal. I've listened to criminals on TV talk about their biggest fear is an armed homeowner and breaking into that house. He said, the cops will give you a chance. Homeowner ain't going to give you no chance. And we just saw this just recently where a gentleman shot 3 teenagers that broke into his house. Okay. They had masks on, they had brass knuckles, they had some knives. Okay, they didn't have a firearm. The fact of the matter is, it just proves my point. The homeowner, you just invaded his castle. That is sacred to him, all right? You just invaded it. Okay, so this is the type of thing that enters the psyche of a criminal. If I go in this man's house, I've got a lot bigger chances of getting shot and killed because he's armed or potentially armed.
Yeah, and what if he wasn't armed and they came in there armed with brass knuckles and knives? What kind of chance would he have? Say they're an older couple. What chance do they have of fighting off somebody? Now, if she had a little birdshot in a 410,
sure.
Used to people would put rock salt in, but the time for temperance may be over.
Well, I think that's why when you live next door to a anti-gun person, you put a sign up in your front yard with an arrow pointing to his house saying he has no guns.
That's pretty good.
But then it's going to give him the incentive to go get some guns because he's just been marked as an easy target.
Well, what was that big drive when the liberals were buying guns up here a while back? Crisis. We need crisis. Give me more crisis, please.
Yes, they got to have a crisis. Get everybody paranoid. People are amazing. What happened to rugged individualism where you took care of yourself, took care of your own situations legally and problems? No. Now everybody wants Big Brother, the government, to come and take care of their pet little project or pet complaint. And it really gets ridiculous. I mean, we had an experience up there in Mesquite a few years ago where we had this. It was all about the Gold Butte Monument. And it was amazing to me to listen to these old retirees that came from California and their attitudes and what they wanted and what they wanted the government to do for them is to take Cliven's property so they could go up there, walk around, look at the flowers or whatever, which they can do anyhow. There's no problem there. But the entitlement mentality that takes somebody else's property so that you can enjoy it. And you see this over and over and over again. Now, they would never dare take a firearm up to that ranch and say, hey, you know what? We're taking over your ranch because we want to have our own little eco-orgasm up here, and we don't want anybody else involved. All right? They will never do that. But they will campaign and lobby and through special interest groups to get their elected officials to get the government to steal somebody else's property. They think that's okay.
Yeah, what's not allowed by an individual is somehow okay if you say it's the government doing it. Yeah. So I forget your Twitter handle there. let me back up just a minute. So there's a lot of these people out here on different sites in the High Scurvy in the Foggy over at the fogbow.com. And some of your folks over there and others on Twitter, obviously not paid by Soros. So many of you, especially some, which is most obvious, is some of these idiots. Now, the last one here, and I forget your name, says he's going to go gray sheep on Joseph Smith's birthland. It's like, well, whatever. Other people talking about, yeah, we're going to go round up these cattle, these trespass cattle, and remove them. I'd like to see that happen.
It'll never happen.
People are idiots, and so they're not all paid trolls, but they are conditioned. And all I can ask is, please, 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 step up with a little more intelligence than what you're using if you really want to be serious.
Well, how do you like this? The guy in New York who complains that Cliven's cattle are eating his plants. His taxes pay for it. or walking on the land or destroying the land. The guy has never come out here. He never will. He has no idea what he's talking about. But he sits behind a keyboard in his basement and puts all this stuff out about how Cliven is stealing from him.
Yeah, I got called for being sitting behind a keyboard. Well, actually, it's a stupid phone, which I hate typing on anyways. But no, we've been out here on the land and rolling around and taking a look, beyond what's being reported in the mainstream. They're big fat liars.
Liar, liar, pants on fire.
I mean, so what are we really talking about? We're talking about being safe and secure. So we're in this supposed societal shift of, whether a person ought to have a gun or not. So what do we do? Let's look at the rabbit. Let's just freeze, okay? Don't move. All right, so you want to jump off down the trail down here and think that the rabbit's going to think, well, if we just make laws where hunters can't have guns, well, you're going to get trapped anyways and get caught somewhere down the line when somebody's got you roasting on a spit. Condition and response is social engineering. That's where you're at. So freeze, right or wrong, you are where you're at, and that's where we are. Wait for further instructions. If you're freezing and having an encounter with a cop, freeze. You don't move. You don't want to get shot. Stop. Do not move. Position protocol. Now, I want to say about the 911 operator from last Saturday. I look back and I say, okay, she was testing me to see if I'm going to give the same answer and with a different question. To me, I've had to deal with a 911 operator before, and they're going to get you killed. It'd be like, there's somebody in my house, and they're going to kill me, and I don't have a gun, and they have like knives and brass knuckles and masks on, and they look really, really mean. So I'm going to go hide in my closet. Well, the operator's all like, and what color mask was they wearing? Like, shh, they'll hear you. Whereas if you've got a gun, your response can be seconds, where the cops are what, minutes? Many minutes sometimes. It took them just over 5 minutes anyways to get there, which is pretty fast, but you'd think and it happened at 4:20 in the morning, by the way. And it was 4:20 somewhere in the world a while ago, by the way. Cannabis can, just a reminder from the Buzz Beaver.
I trust Metro a whole lot more than I trust BLM agents out in the hillsides. They've killed 2 people here under mysterious circumstances that have never, ever been rectified. And once you're out in those hills and it's just you and them, I mean, you're totally at their mercy. They don't carry body cams, all right? They don't answer to the Metro Police Department or the sheriffs. They can pretty much do whatever they want with you. We had a gentleman by the name, I forget his last name, but it was Scotty. I think I'm going to say it was probably about 5 years ago. Everybody that knew him said he was just a wonderful person. He was a rock hound. And he's like to go up in these hills and collect rocks any things of that nature. And he was shot and killed by a BLM agent. Okay, so you got one witness. The other witness is dead. Okay, he can't speak for himself. So they went entirely. The government did the investigation. They didn't allow the sheriff to do the investigation, and they just said, well, he was aggressive. What the hell does that mean? Okay, we'll never get to the bottom of it.
No,
never will.
Shoot to kill and cover up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then this young black man a few years ago in Red Rock. That was a real sad story. That was about as disgusting as you can get. As a gentleman, this young black guy comes from Southern California. He's not used to this type of heat. He decides to go through the Red Rock area, and there's some bike races going on there. And anyhow, he breaks down, and it's like 110 degrees outside, and he's walking, and he has no water, so he's trying to flag down some of these bikers. They carry water, and they didn't oblige him, but they reported him. And what happens? Okay, the BLM shows up, tries to take him into custody. They're beating him up. He's telling them, I just need some water. And, he freaks out. Who knows? Maybe he was so dehydrated he wasn't thinking normal. That usually is happening when people don't have enough water in their system. And he runs from them. And about that time, a trooper pulls up. He wants the trooper to help him. All right. He jumps in his car, the trooper's car, and the BLM agents come up and shoot him and kill him.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it was really a sad situation. Absolutely disgusting.
Where was the trooper? Did he get out of the car? Did the guy get in the back seat?
Yeah, what happened is, he had gotten out of the car just about the time the young black guy ran up to him for help and jumped in his car. He figures these crazy BLM guys are probably PTS. That's one of the interesting things that we found out from these court systems. Is all these BLM agents are former military, been in Afghanistan and Iraq, and there's no doubt in my mind that Agent Swanson has PTSD. He was just begging to shoot Eric Parker. So here you go again. They just, with hardly any cause whatsoever, they just shoot and kill this young man in the trooper's vehicle. All right. So that's how bad. The BLM should have no right to carry any firearm. They should just actually, they need to go back to their old mandate, and that was to simply help prevent range wars by, determining the boundaries for the different ranches, and then maybe help them build some fences and things like that. That's the Taylor Grazing Act. That's the only thing that they were ever given. Now they're a paramilitary force, that comes in against the American people and either harasses them or murders them.
Same with the U.S. Forest Service, right?
Exactly.
So these people calling for gun control, they're okay with these guys being armed and having heavy-handed tactics.
Yeah.
It's not like they're just like walking around with a pistol. We're looking at a military unit, and with the military mentality of shoot first and ask questions later.
So they're not anti-gun; they're actually pro-gun.
Yeah.
They just don't want. They just want the military to have the guns, or law enforcement to have the guns, or BLM or Forest Service. So it's so hypocritical. They come out and they talk about they want to get rid of the guns. They don't want to get rid of the guns. They just want a certain segment of our society to have the guns, which just happens to be historically the most dangerous segment of your society there ever been. I mean, they're not
historically, yes.
Yeah, they're not happy just to kill a few people. No, they wipe out whole civilizations.
No, we've seen past conflicts through the past century of millions and millions, hundreds of millions of people that have been killed. But some people, like at the Center for Biological Diversity, they would parade that, think that is a good thing. All I can say is be the first one to step up. If you think the world's got too many people, then feel free to exit.
Yeah, well, you just hit on the root cause. These people don't want to come out and say, we need to eliminate 90% of the world's population, because then they would be exposed and as the enemy, is the true enemy. And, we would rise up against them if they said that. But that is their basic premise, is they look at humanity as a cancer on the earth, that has to be eradicated. Now, they're very limited in their intelligence. I've read over 200 of their statements where they want to reduce the world's population by 90%. All right. But they never, in fact, these are the same people that will not allow free energy. Okay. But they're the same people who will not allow us to clean up our environment. They don't want it. They need those issues. They need those issues to push their agenda. Look what the people on the planet are doing to the planet. Okay. I mean, over and over again, there have been wonderful free energy projects that could clean our water, clean our air, clean our environment. They will not allow them to take root. They will not allow them to take hold.
Now that's the corruption. That's the crimes of the state, the corporatocracy, and that's the occupation that we live in. Stand up. It don't matter to me if you're on the left or the right. Do something that matters, but by all means, please educate yourself and don't carry over this tired-ass rhetoric that has no logic in it and is convoluted.
I read an article about how much energy is in sand. It is amazing, and it is accessible. And the governments, primarily this government, will not allow it. But pretty much all governments will not allow it. They need those issues to stay in power. And once those issues are gone, the people just look at them like as misnomers. We don't really need you, okay? So they need those issues to help them stay in power.
Yeah. Well, I think we're rolling into a little early end right here, about 15 minutes short. We've run through the topic list, and we'll be back again next week. Now, so let's see here. What are my plans next week? To be out getting signatures for Ed Euling, running for Lieutenant Governor of Nevada. And so we need a couple hundred, 250 signatures to get him on the ballot. It's nonpartisan, running independent and on the land rights and tourism, and it's got other platforms to be upon. Let's see now. Also, next weekend, we're going to be going up into Utah. We're going to go up and it's going to be Sandy, Utah. We're going to listen to Carol Bundy and Jeanette Fiddicombe speak. And then I'll be coming back in, so we'll be the weekend of rolling around. And so the first of the following week, I'll be headed down to Texas, and more to come on that. So I'm 15 months of rolling around the road here, and I'll be headed back pretty soon back towards where I like to hang my hat.
You're going to miss me?
Yeah, I'm going to miss you. Brand's welcome me in. He said I can stay as long as I like, but the lease is up in August. So.
Well, we've had a good time together.
Yeah.
You and I are not always on the same page on everything, but I've learned some things from you. I think you probably learned some things from me.
Absolutely.
And that's always good. None of us got it all. None of us have the corner on the market of the knowledge and intelligence. And I like your attitude that when somebody helps you learn something, you appreciate it. And I'm the same way. It might take me a few minutes to digest it, but I am the same way. And it's been a real pleasure to have you, Vincent. You can come back anytime you want.
I appreciate it, Ray. Really, really enjoy it. A great time. And really just so comfortable and life at ease. And it's given me a great opportunity to observe you and get to know you and to be able to definitely make a stand for these rumors flying around about somehow you not being a loyal patriot or being an FBI agent. And met your family and interacted and, listened to your calls that people you talk to. You are connecting voices and trying to bring sense of all this and try to get this information out. So we have people that come in to destroy that, and that's just the way things happen. And you need to be smart enough. I say you the listener, have to be smart enough to digest all this and sort through, like what is it, the bat that eats the fruit and poops out the seed. Yeah, there's still some good stuff you can eat inside right there. So.
That's some of the most expensive coffee that you can get is where this civet cat, I think it's in South America, or no, it's in Africa, actually eats the coffee bean, the whole coffee fruit, and then craps out the coffee bean. And this intestinal tract takes out the acids, and it's extremely, you can't hardly get this coffee, but it just goes to show, that you can make some good stuff out of poop.
Poopy. And speaking of poop, there's this VinE the poop. And thanks for tuning in, everybody. Again, Brand, thanks for coming in. And let me put my headset on here, and I'll come back over to Gander Freeman. Hello.
Yes. Are you done now?
I think so.
All right.
About on cue. Yeah, about 15 minutes early. We're going to shut down. There's the phone call. So thanks, everybody, for listening and tuning in. This is Freakers Friday. We've got Grammy Mary coming up tonight, 6 o'clock in Pacific time. And I got to translate time zones here. And then the Freakers Ball, y'all, coming up. And I believe that is 8 o'clock in one time zone or another.
8 o'clock west, 11 o'clock east.
That's right. Yeah, where I'm at, 8 o'clock. What is it, Moosey along for? Is it Balls to the Walls or the Freakers Ball, y'all?
As far as I know, it's Freakers Ball. That's always subject to change at the last minute, but.
So then I'll be free Ken VinE then tonight, a little later on. Tuning in.
All right. Thanks, Vince.
Thanks, Grimmer. Thanks, everybody, for listening. We'll see y'all on the radio.
Later, folks.
Peace.